Welcome to 100 Yards of Football this morning. I'm your host, Vincent Turner. And today we're going to be covering the NBA Draft 2020. My guest, I couldn't be more proud. It's been about 9 years. And this gentleman started with me when I was way back. When we was way back. And there were some challenges. But the young man has made me very proud. He's got one of the best basketball podcasts out there called Tate. He worked for one of the top radio stations in the Southeast, 92.9. And man, when I say the young man knows basketball, he knows it inside out. He's from the 517, Lansing, Michigan, the same hometown as Magic Johnson, the Vincent brothers, Sam and Jay, and Mr. John Smokes, Atlanta Braves legend. Man, I'm happy. I'm excited. We're going to do this thing, as we used to say back in the day on the days of WGUN. And we're going to talk basketball this morning here on 100 Yards of Football. So if you like the video today, please come in and share. We'll surely appreciate it. Let me bring him up. My man from Lansing, Michigan, the 517, DeShaun Tate. How you doing, man?
Outstanding, man. What's up, Mr. Vince? I appreciate you for having me on, whatnot. That's a heck of an introduction. I'm not sure I've ever heard one like that before, but nonetheless, I'm happy to be here with you, man. And I want to make sure I preface things by saying this first before we get into some hoops, dude. There was, a lot of people, specifically within the local Atlanta area, know me to cover basketball on all levels. But you had to get your start somewhere. And while a lot of people thought that was 92.9 amongst other places, there's one person that gave me a shot, man, gave me an opportunity to get my first start in this business. And that was you, Mr. Vincent Turner, Mr. Football. So I will forever be thankful and grateful that you gave me the opportunity. And I definitely don't say it enough, but I thank you very much.
Hey, man, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Serious talk. We went through some serious issues back in the day. We grinded, but one thing that we always kept this goal is that we're going to be about that life when it came to sports. And I'm just glad to see where you at. The Jay Billis interviews, Rob Parker, Chris Bouchard, man, you're on another level. And I'm very thankful that today you joined us here at 100 Yards of Football. So further ado, if you like the video today, please come in and share it. As the great band, Lakeside, my band back from the 1970s, said, are you ready for this magic carpet ride? Because we're going to get ready to talk basketball. So, man, let's start it off right quick before we get into the NBA draft.
Okay.
The Lakers winning their, 17th championship.
Mm-hmm.
Comment on that real quick in the success of the NBA bubble. Do you think it was a success or not?
It was definitely a success, Vince. I mean, when you look at the fact that going into, well, first of all, we didn't even know if we was going to even have a season that was going to be able to resumption of a season. But then nonetheless, you hear a lot of people saying that they was a little bit too skeptical of the situation because of COVID-19 and the pandemic, even more so. The fact that there were some guys that, decided not to play because of, their families and so forth and didn't want to be concerned with, maybe getting them sick or having, showing symptoms and so forth. Kyrie Irving came out and said, hey, this is our time to show and keep our foot on the gas pedal of the Black Lives Matters movement. LeBron James was one that said, hey, no, I want to go ahead with this thing and I want to play. And he's the face of the franchise. He's the face of this organization. He wants to play. Then more than likely they're going to go out there and play. I don't think that was really in question. But the most impressive thing was the fact that there was no positive tests. You had some guys that was sneaking around and a little bit like that and jumping out of the bubble and coming back in. But I'm happy that everybody was able to be safe. Overall, it was a success. And LeBron got exactly what he wanted. And that was to bring a 17th world title to the organization. So I like to think that the bubble was a success, and it does give somewhat of a platform for other sports, being NFL or college football or college basketball, which I know the football is a little bit more difficult to do in a bubble space, but just to be able to show them that success can happen and basketball reigns supreme.
Okay, if you like the video, please come in and share it. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes, baby. The 2020 NBA draft coming up on November 18th. Am I correct? November 18th. Okay. Let's talk about some of the top prospects, baby. You know I'm going to start down there in the 901, the University of Memphis. He only played, 3 games, I think, last year. But I heard last week he had an outstanding workout. My man, James Wiseman. A lot of people are comparing him to it. Don't get ecstatic now, because you know how you blow a head gasket when I bring up certain players. But a lot of people saying James Wiseman got a little Chris Bosh in him.
I can see some Bosh in there too. I'm not saying that he's gonna beat Chris Bosh. I don't think he's gonna beat Chris Bosh. He was never my favorite to going into the lottery, a guy that I thought or expected, even watching him on the high school level, that was going to be number one. But the thing is that, you know, when you start NBA draft, a lot of it isn't really based on the eye test players could potentially be. So he's not going to be drafted number one. A lot of these guys aren't necessarily going to be drafted based off of what they've done on the collegiate level or internationally already. It's going to be based off of, you know, being a project. But if I was, and I made these choices based off of who I would take because of situations, players best available, and needs because of the teams. That's where I got James Wiseman slotted at number one, because I think that it'll be a really good fit up next to Karl Anthony Towns, and that they're going to need some presence up front from a guy who can't necessarily stretch out and shoot the three exactly the way that Karl Anthony Towns can. Can he develop into that? Sure. I'm just hoping and keeping my fingers crossed that James Wiseman is more Chris Bosh than he is. Hopefully you can promise me that he's not a Nerlens Noel type, because if that's the case, he won't be worthy of that pick. Okay, let's go down here over here in Athens, Georgia. I'm broadcasting locally here in the metro area. Athens is about an hour away. The hype on Anthony Edwards, 6'4", explosive. Where you see him really having a career in the NBA, and what's your take on him? I think he can have a good career in the NBA. I mean, he is fit to what looks like to be a number one pick. And a lot of that is because of what he's done on the collegiate level, not necessarily defensively, but more so offensively. A lot of comparisons being made because of his body stature, big, bulky guy, to a Victor Oladipo, to Dwayne Wade, two guys that his head coach, Tom Crean, down at UGA has coached. And he's going to wow people with his athleticism. I mean, the dude has a physical build of what essentially looks like a beast, and he's a scoring machine. So he's ready from a body standpoint. Maturity standpoint, I'm not sure that I'm willing to go that far with Ant-Man. But there's a lot of guys at 17, 18, 19 years old. You put me in those positions, and I'm pretty sure I would have looked really immature too. So, but I think that he'll be just fine. He's got to be one that's put in a little bit different situation than other guys. But I think that it could work out for him. I'm just not feeling that number 2 to Golden State is necessarily where I think he should go. But there's obviously a good chance, because at one point, and probably still in the minds of a lot of people, he is the consensus overall pick.
A guy who I think is the best player in the draft. Now, I'm not a basketball expert. I stay in my lane. I'm more football. But okay. I like the young man out of Dayton, Mr. Toppin, out of Brooklyn, New York. Your opinion on his game overall?
I like Obi Toppin, man. The thing that I love about Obi the most is the fact that he's experienced. He's almost like an experienced vet. Now, this is going to surprise some people, but I think that Obi is a, 22-year-old sophomore, I think. Now, don't ask me necessarily how that works. I know that there was some issues with him in the past and so forth, but obviously in the year of college basketball, like what we had, you know, in a year like this, in this year's draft, where you don't have like a ton of upperclassmen that's expected to be taken high, a guy that shows some athleticism, maybe his shot blocking and amongst maybe a little bit of rebounding. I mean, it's questionable a little bit because it is the Atlantic 10. He didn't play in a Power 5 conference, so he did dominate against everybody he played against. I remember the Maui Invitational where he played against Kansas, played really well, and everybody was raving about him at that time too. So I like him, and I personally like him in Golden State, because not only is he light-skinned like the rest of the brothers, I'm always going to be one that's going to vouch for the light-skinned brothers, but nonetheless, he does bring that experience. He's mature enough to play with those guys that are ready to bring somebody in who who's experienced, mature enough, who wants to be a winner, who wants to learn, and they can put him at the 5 position when they decide to go small. So I think it's an ideal fit, but he is older and it's questionable as to how high his ceiling is.
So basically, I should call him the Chico DeBarge of the NBA.
I guess you can go there with that. I mean, he had to take off the goatee a little bit and just go straight mustache. But other than that, yeah, you can call him DeBarge.
Okay, man. Another guy. Now, I looked at your list. Remember, you sent me over your top 10 list on Thursday evening.
No doubt.
Now, we're going to get some controversy started here on 100 Yards of Football. Now,
Good.
Last night, I did my research. I saw at least 3 NBA sites had this guy number 1.
Yeah.
But on your list,
Yeah.
he came in number 10.
Yeah.
So to the nation out there, what do you don't see in LaMelo Ball being the number 1 overall pick when you got him number 10 on your list?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's questionable as far as like the competition in some cases as the guys he's played. Now, don't get me wrong. He has that ball effect. He has the thing that pretty much all the Ball brothers have. He has the length. That's one word that you're going to hear about in the NBA draft when it comes around on the 18th, probably more than any other word. If I could have just $1 for every word you heard length during that broadcast, then I think I'd be pretty rich. When you start talking about his length, maybe not the most athletic guy, but he does have that court vision. He does have that size at a guy coming in somewhere around 6'7" or so. So I think if he was taken from somebody like a Golden State, I mean, in terms of where I compare him to, he reminds me of the young Sean Livingston before Sean Livingston got hurt. That's who he reminds me of. But I think a lot of times his shooting is a little bit sporadic. I can think of guys, and again, I put him at number 10 because of the situations for a lot of these teams in terms of what they need. Hey, listen. And there's another guy that played out there on the international level in Australia with him named RJ Hampton from Little Elm, Texas. I like him more than I like LaMelo Ball. That's not going to be the most popular consensus thing to say that a lot of people are going to agree with, but that's the way I feel. I've seen him in person. I love what he can do. I love what he brings to the table, and I think he got a chance at being a better pro. But I take LaMelo Ball all the way down on the list, and I told you, I try not to be biased towards light skin, okay? So I didn't put him as high as I would. A lot of people think that I should, but when you start talking about what he did at Chino Hills, and I know that he was real young at that time. But, his maturity level at that time was also, not up to par. And you can't expect it to be at like 15. But he moved on from there and went to play on the international level. I'm questionable about some of the competition he played. Then he played over at Spire in Ohio Academy, where the competition level was obviously a lot more balanced. But then went back over to play international. I think it's really about the hype of LaMelo Ball more so than it is the total overall package of what we call a skill set.
Boy, you bringing it this morning. Another question I have, and you brought the gentleman up that I'm very excited about. I think he's one of the better prospects in the draft, RJ Hampton. I'm 100 yards of football, but I'm 100 yards of basketball. I'm the GM. No, you my GM.
Okay.
Right now, who you taking based on who you like in the potential? RJ Hampton or Cole Anthony?
I think I'm gonna take I think that one is a little bit more
now. All potential.
Off potential. I think that one is tough too. I'm gonna go with RJ Hampton slightly on that one. I did have Cole Anthony in my particular Tate's Take NBA 2020 mock draft higher than I did LaMelo Ball too, by the way. But I really like Cole Anthony because I think the mentality, that New York guard mentality that he comes in with, I think it's really hard to kind of match that. And that plays a big part, especially going into the NBA. But he's a very physical guard. But I'm taking RJ Hampton based on the fact that I just think that his ceiling is a little bit higher. I think that he can do a little bit more. I think his jump shot is a little bit more crisp than it is Cole Anthony. But those guys are a lot more neck and neck than LaMelo Ball versus any of those guys, in my personal opinion.
Okay. Moving down your list overall in the first round. I'm going off your list, my brother.
Okay.
Now, you had some very interesting players that you had in your list. And, of course, you had to give Michigan State some love because I have not seen this gentleman in anybody's first-round mock draft. But I saw Mr. Xavier Tillman You had him what? Let me look at your list. You had him 19 going down.
18.
18.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, tell us about Mr. Tim. Because there's a lot of people out there don't even know about him going in the first round.
I was a little surprised that I had Tillman going that far as well. I was surprised not necessarily surprised, but I didn't expect that he would be a first round pick either when I started looking at this draft in its entirety, which is a poor or down draft in comparison to other years. He's one of those dudes that I think he went to the draft based on his situation, and I can't blame him. For a dude that's married with 2 kids, it's not about winning national championships and putting money in other people's pockets anymore. It's about being able to take care of home. And I think that, that's his primary, and that's what needs to be his primary. But he won Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten. He's not a terrible offensive player, but he's not going to the league to have plays run for him or to be explosive on the offensive end. He's there to play defense. He's there to grab rebounds. He's there because of his experience. He is a coachable player, and he has some talent. But next level talent, maybe not that much, but it depends on what you need him to do. He's going to play his role, and he's going to do what you need him to do, and he's not going to complain about it. He's going to earn his checks that way. And so when you start talking about guys that have experience, come from a winning program, that is coachable and that is a grown man, it kind of reminds me of Obi Toppin, why I have him going so high, and that's why Golden State should look at him. This is why Dallas should look at Xavier Tillman, because when you start looking at their bigs up front, they don't have very many players that play and bring what Xavier Tillman can bring. And so that's why I like him in the first round at number 18. Now, can he slide down and be a second round player? Absolutely. Is that what I expect? Well, absolutely. But that's just where I would take it if I was Mark Cuban.
Now I'm going to move on back down to my hometown, down south. You visit the place, so you know what I'm talking about. And you know I'm awfully proud of that place, the 901 Memphis, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be a lot of people watching this video once we finish today.
No doubt.
Your opinion on Precious Achiuwa?
I like Precious. Precious doesn't have anything that says special. That's part of the issue that I have. But that's a real small issue because there's a lot of guys in the NBA that aren't special. There's few guys in the NBA that are special. But as far as what Denver needs at number, what are we looking at? 22?
Yes,
like
sir.
Denver has some players like that. Like when you start talking about a Jeremy Grant, he reminds me much of Jeremy Grant, but Jeremy Grant is questionable in some cases because of free agency. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen there yet, and that's not until after the draft. So I think it's still a good opportunity to take a chance there. He's not the shooter. I mean, I think it's a perfect situation to get a guy who's young, not only has potential, has a little bit of upside, maybe not a ton, but when you have when you have the big man out there, shooting threes the way that they do, you got to have somebody under there that's able to clean the glass. And I think that's something that Precious Achiuwa can do. And I think it's a very good fit for him in joining his boy that also came from Memphis as well. So I think that them kind of teaming up together to be a nice little tandem, and Will Barton, I think that they can help each other out. And there's a lot of players on that Denver team that can help out Precious. Precious can go higher, but ideally, I think Precious is right around that 22 spot of where he needs to be, and definitely could be higher though.
Another guy that I really like in the draft, man. I don't want to butcher his name up today, so I'm gonna let you take over his name. I'm gonna say his first name, Isaac. Saw the young man play in high school locally here, McKeachton High School, and the guy by far was the best player for Auburn last year. You bring up his name, but man, I think overall, when you talk about defense, you talking about a guy that you can coach, and a young guy that's got a lot of upside, the young man out of Auburn, coached by Bruce Pearl. Give his name out there to our audience.
Yeah, Isaac Okoro. When people seen what McKeachton High School on a national level, nationally ranked team was able to do, everybody started, looking at the point guard and who's also going to be an Auburn product as well. But I don't think there's nearly enough. Yeah, Sharif Cooper. I don't think that there's nearly enough credit that Isaac Okoro got on that particular team, right? Nor on Auburn. He's not going to be a guy that's going to wow you on the offensive end necessarily, but he's more solid. It's just that his defense is just that stout. He's a guy that can defend, 3 positions for sure, can defend on the perimeter at 6'6" and plays much bigger than he actually is. In this small ball NBA, he can definitely defend some 4 positions. And so I just think he's solid overall. This is an NBA that needs more defensive players. Everybody's just trying to outscore everybody. If you couldn't tell by looking at the Houston Rockets and the kind of system that they had and everything else, like there needs to be more defensive presence in this league. And he's a guy that you don't have to yank up by the uniform, call a timeout, bring him over in the huddle, grab him up by the jersey, cuss him out and send him back out there to go play better defense. He's not that kind of player. If you tell him you need him to play defense, he embraces defense. He wants to play defense. There's not many of those players anymore. And I love that about him. And I think there shouldn't be a question as to whether Isaac Okoro is a top 10 player. And if I'm being honest, he should be definitely a top 5 player, in my opinion. Now, let me say this real quick because I know I get kind of long-winded. So you got to
keep going, brother. Keep going.
But let me say this.
Good today.
I talked to a lot of fans that love the Atlanta Hawks, obviously in Atlanta, and people were a little pissed off that Atlanta didn't get the number 1 pick in the draft. You don't want the number 1 pick in this draft. There's a lot less risk that you have to take and higher reward that you can get with players after the top 5. So when you start talking about number 6 with Atlanta being arguably or inarguably the worst defensive team in the NBA, you get a guy like Isaac Okoro who's already familiar, and I like to think is mature and coachable as well, familiar with the area. It's a win-win situation. You get somebody like that who can play defense and hopefully get guys around him to kind of buy into the same thing. He's that type of player, and he's just that good, and he's not bad on offense. Again, he's just that good at defense.
Okay, we're going to move on to the final NBA draft question because we could talk for 3 or 4 hours, brother. I could sit up here and ask you all type of questions because we got other subjects we want to get into. Right quick, what do the Atlanta Hawks here locally need to do with this 6th pick? What do they need to do to get Trae Young some help?
Yeah, well, first of all, you trade the pick. I mean, you got a whole starting lineup of guys that are under 25 years old, and I only say that because we haven't seen Clint Capella yet, who's the oldest player on the team, I think, at age 28. Everybody else this past year was under the age of 25. And so while that does bring some optimism, some positivity, and some bright spots on the team, those guys still have to grow. Their problem is that they don't have enough adults on the team. You know what I'm saying? They don't have that kind of experience. They got too many kids on the team. When I say kids, in a good way, I mean, in a realistic way, rather. You know what I mean? Good players, but we still don't know what all, guys like Hunter is going to turn out to be like, and Reddish is going to turn out to be like, and so forth. So you don't want to get younger. That's why you try to bust moves to get older. Now, at some point, because of the cap, and you're going to have to pay Trae Young a buku amount of dollars when that time comes up in around about a year, if they don't do so a little bit sooner. John Collins' contract year is about here at this point. So you're going to have to make some moves, and you're going to have to get rid of guys. Now, between Hunter, Reddish, and Herter, you're going to have to do something at some point. You're not going to be able to keep all these guys and pay them big-time money. So I say you package up that number 6 pick, along with either, another one in the second round. I think they got one at the 50-something. In addition to maybe Herter, and try and go after a really good piece to complement Trae Young, or that Trae Young can even complement, depending on who that player is. And if you have to make a pick, that guy is one of 2 guys. That guy is either Isaac Okoro for defensive purposes, or that guy is a guy that has size that can back up Trae Young in the point guard position, like Tyrese Halliburton from Iowa State.
I like
or you can put him in the same backcourt with Trae Young in situations when you want Trae Young to play off the ball and not have to be concerned with Trae Young being bad on defense, doing everything on offense, and setting up other players playing point guard. I think that gives them a little bit of a break, and I think that that's an ideal situation for the Hawks.
Okay, moving on quickly. That concludes our NBA 2020 draft overall profile with the legend himself, the young gun, Mr. DeShaun Tate. Before we move on to the college basketball, We got a debate going on 100 yards of football. It's been very hectic. I need you to say in so many small words. Now, we're going to talk about the GOAT in the NBA. I like LeBron James. That's where my vote going. Who you vote real quickly? Michael Jordan and LeBron James is the greatest player in NBA history.
Mr. Vince, I said that I wasn't going to never answer this question again between LeBron James and Michael Jordan. Why I feel the need to do it again, I guess, is only going to be because you're my boy and you gave me my start in this business. Most of the people who feel like, it's this simple. Most of the people who feel like LeBron James is the best player in this league to ever play the game, 9 times out of 10, you look down at their shoes and they wearing Jordans, okay? I don't see many people walking around wearing LeBron James shoes every day. How come it is when we compare any player, whether it's LeBron, Kobe, this person, that person, whomever it is, why do we always find a way to compare them to Michael Jordan? Like, why is Michael Jordan always the standard if he's not the GOAT? It's because he is the GOAT. LeBron James doesn't wear the number 23 on his back because he came up with it or just pulled it out the air or because it looks cute. He wears it because the greatest player of all time wore number 23. The man has a uniform high up in the rafters of a franchise that he never played for in the Miami Heat, where nobody is allowed to wear number 23, hence why LeBron probably wore number 7. The reality is that that Michael is the GOAT. I think LeBron knows it. I think everybody knows it for the most part. Now, what I will give LeBron is that LeBron will be the most accomplished basketball player to probably ever play this game. I believe that LeBron is the greatest basketball athlete that we've ever seen play this game. But basketball player, let me ask you this, because I've seen it. Listen, quick question for you, Mr. Vince. Have you ever seen Home Alone?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever seen The Matrix?
Yes, sir.
I've seen this movie before. Everything that that people try to express and explain, I've seen it before. It's a movie that I've seen before. There's going to be another great player that's going to come around way after LeBron James, and people are going to say that he's the greatest player of all time as well. At the end of the day, I don't think that it's a question, man. It's Michael Jordan, and I hope that this is the last time that I ever have to discuss it.
No, you're going to have to discuss it a lot more times, baby. You know it's coming. So at the end of the day, hey, it's what it is. But I like that answer, though. I just had to ask you here on 100 Yards Football because it is major debate on our videos that we put up every week, especially in our basketball segment. Shout outs to Coach Brian Spencer of Carver College, Syracuse finest today. But let's move on right quickly. 2 teams in college basketball that I want you to give us a quick observation. Of course, I'm going to go back down to the 901, the University of Memphis, my hometown, the school I love. Is Memphis an NCAA team this year? Do we finally make the tournament? And we haven't been there in about 6 years.
I think
that you finally make the tournament this year.
I think you make the tournament if you're Memphis. A large part of that is because of Cisse, obviously, but outside of that, because I think that he's going to bring what a lot of people was hoping that they would see in James Wiseman. Is he going to be that exact player? Probably not. Is he going to be a better player than that? We really don't know because of the fact that we only seen Wiseman for 3 years. Lester Quinones was. I'm not the biggest fan of the little 70s and 80s look. You know, like they wear little boy shorts and all that, but he can play. You know, he was arguably the most consistent player that they had. You bringing somebody over in a transfer like Isaiah Stokes, who I saw over at IMG when he was in high school. He's a grown man in there and built just like his brother Jarnell Stokes, real bottom heavy. He's going to be hard to get around on a lot of screens. He's big, he's strong, he gets rebounds. Anything that you get out of him offensively, I think is going to be a bonus. You get Landers Nolly, who played really well for Virginia Tech last year. He's a transfer as well. He's a scoring machine based out of Georgia too. DJ Jeffries returns, who was one of my favorite and more underrated freshmen in college basketball last year until he got hurt, and him being able to come back, I think is going to help this team significantly. And if they get anything out of Boogie Ellis finally, who came over as a transfer from Duke, or not a transfer technically, but a decommit from Duke. You get anything positive out of him, he got a lot of ground to make up because of so much disappointment from last year. You get some out of him, they're going to be a really tough team to beat, and I expect for them to win the AAC.
Man. Now I'm going to move on to your team, but you know what? Excuse me. You know what? You made me very happy. Before I move on to Michigan State, I got to do this. Okay. Go Tigers, go! Go Tigers, go! I know you saw that when you went down to the Midnight Madness last year. Now let's move over to your Michigan State Spartans.
Michigan State is one of them teams that, I mean, this isn't going to be a Michigan State team that is going to get shown a lot of love. I mean, this just appears to be somewhat of an average, if it's okay to say that, Tom Izzo type team. But I think the main thing is they just have to really stick to the standards that Tom Izzo has kind of put in place when it comes to rebounding and second chance points and getting on the ground after loose balls and second chance effort and all of these little things. They're going to be just fine because of the guy that's over there on the sidelines walking around with the suit and the tie on. But being able to get Joshua Langford back, again, anything you get is going to be a bonus. He ain't played in a year and a half, but he was arguably the best player on that team at that particular time. Outside of that, you've got guys like Aaron Henry, who's now a junior, who I think needs to be more consistent. Everybody's showing him so much more love than Gabe Brown, but Gabe Brown is a better athlete than people give him credit for. And arguably, to me, I think he's the best shooter on this team. And he's matured a lot. He's kind of grown into his body a little bit more. And I think that he's a guy that people want to keep their eyes and their ears open for. Rocket Watts is going to be a scoring machine, and I don't expect anything different from that. Now, when you lose guys like Cassius Winston, somebody's got to step up in that place. And I think that Rocket is somewhat ideal. And I only say somewhat because Rocket is more of a combo guard. They don't necessarily have that point guard, prototypical or traditional point guard position set in stone, where I do think that he will be the starter. When you have a freshman coming in and you have a guy like Foster Loyer, who has not been remotely close to what you want him to look like around this time going into his junior season as well. If he could just be half of what Drew Neitzel was, I think that they'll be just fine. You also got, guys like Marcus Bingham, who is near 7 feet tall, but he's so skinny he can probably hula hoop in a Cheerio or a rubber band. He's got to add on a little bit more weight. But hey, look at me, Mr. Vince. I've been 150 ever since you met me, and I'm a grown man. I'm 36 years old. You're not going to be able to put weight on guys all the time. It's not necessarily the greatest thing in the world. So you just let him be, and he can step out and shoot from outside as well. Michigan State's going to be just fine. I don't have very many concerns. They're going to continue to be Michigan State, do what Michigan State does, and probably most importantly, prepare themselves for what's to come next with a really stout class next year, especially if they can get the guy who comes in from 2022 expected to come in, being Imani Bates. If they can get him to reclassify and come in with Max Christie amongst other guys, I think that this is just really a Michigan State year that's preparing for years to come ahead for some success.
Wow. Okay. We're going to end the show today. We're going to go over to Michigan State football. New coach in Mel Tucker. Y'all opened up the Big Ten season, got upset by Rutgers, but y'all shocked the world this past Saturday. Y'all was a 25-point underdog against Michigan. So I'm going to ask you, Mel Tucker had a huge win this Saturday. Michigan State, it took me a memory back when I was 6 years old, back in 1966, when y'all had split the national championship with Notre Dame. Are we finna go back to the days of Duffy Doherty, George Webster, Clint Jones, Jimmy Ray, Charles Thornhill, Jess Phillips? Is Michigan State finna be back on the map football-wise in college football? Because Mel Tucker shocked the world. He shocked the world on Saturday, my brother. And most of all, the freshman wide receiver. Oh, my God. Ricky White, 196 yards? They comparing him to be the best receiver that came on campus since Andre Rison. And I didn't know this. Did you know this? Ricky White is from Marietta. Marietta High School. He was on that state championship team with Harrison Bailey and Gilbert, who's down at LSU. I didn't know that. And then what's so impressive about the young man, Mr. Ricky White, the receiver, the guy's a biology major studying to be a doctor. Man, the Green at Michigan State last weekend. Boy, everybody taking a look at Mel Tucker. Is we going back to 1966? Help me out.
Well, I'm still trying to figure out if people taking a good look at Mel Tucker for good reasons or bad, because a lot of people was calling for his head already against the loss to Rutgers, which Rutgers is obviously under Bobby Petrino. They're going to be a much improved team, but I've seen crazier things happen. We're talking about 2020. Nothing can surprise me in 2020 anymore. It feels like, when you're looking at what Michigan State was able to do, they was able to dominate on both sides of the ball. They were able to expose Michigan's secondary and their cornerbacks. Obviously, now it's definitely going too far to say that they're going back to 66 and so forth. I think that that's just a little bit too premature. I'm definitely not saying that. It would be great. We can keep our fingers crossed, toes crossed, eyes crossed, everything crossed to hopefully see that they could do something like that, obviously. But I think that Mel Tucker will be just fine. You start talking about giving him 2 to 3 years. I don't question that he's going to be able to get Michigan State back to a position within that much time to where they lose maybe 2 games, maybe 3 games, go to a really good bowl game, win the bowl game, and then probably see him do the same thing to Michigan State that he did at Colorado. But nobody will be able to fault him for it because of everything that Michigan State had to endure, even off the field, during the Mark D'Antonio era. So with that being said, I like to think that they'll get back this year. I wouldn't go that far. Now, some people saying, they're only going to win 2 games, maybe 3. I'm not sure I'll be willing to go that far either. I mean, Michigan State going 4-4, I think is probably pretty fair, maybe considering their schedule. I don't know what's going to happen with Penn State after, where their mentality is at after, losing their coach. Ohio State is obviously what looks like a loss, but a lot of people are automatically – Michigan State is one of those programs that everybody's going to write off, and that's just the way that it is because they're not going to be able to recruit with Michigan. They're not going to be able to recruit with Ohio State, but they're going to be able to bring guys in, especially you start talking about those ties. What was it? Defensive coordinator Mel Tucker used to be at Georgia or something like that. When you start talking about the fact that he's going to be able to recruit guys 3 stars on up that can come in and play his system and want to go there because of what they know that he can do, this is a very good start for Mel Tucker. Now, as far as White having expectation as high as Andre Rison, they say is the best wide receiver to ever come through there. I don't know. There was a boy that they had number 1 getting the ball thrown to him from Jeff Smoker being the quarterback named Charles Rogers, R.I.P. God rest his soul, who's a damn good receiver in his own right. So before we start giving White all these accolades, let's appreciate him for what he's done. He put up near 200 yards on Michigan. That's great. That's fine. That's dandy, but you still got a long season to go. And just worry about the game that's up next. So congrats to Michigan State, but they had to do that. I mean, that's a rivalry game. You know what I'm saying? Anytime you play, those guys from up the road, you can always expect ain't never going to be none of that blowout and all of that. That's not going to happen over here. This is Michigan State. They stand and they fight.
Man, I like that. One thing I came away very impressed with Michigan State this weekend, looking at that Michigan game, they outplayed and they outmuscled the 13th ranked team in the country last week. And I'm going to tell you this. I know Charles Rogers was a great football player, IP, up there formerly Detroit Lions. Andre Rison was real good. But it's something special about Ricky White. It's something special. He was on the state team last year where 2 players got all the accolades. And he put something on there on a national level. And doing it against Michigan, I come away very impressed. But, hey, man, it's been very grateful and very thankful today that, man, we done had some fun. We can talk sports all day long. So tell the people out there where they can find you, what you're doing right now at this moment, and where they can get some extensive NBA coverage.
Yeah, I got some really awesome things that are coming up as we draw closer to NBA draft on the 18th, free agency following that. College basketball, don't forget, the day before Thanksgiving on what is that? I believe the 25th of November. So it's going to be busy and ramped up. Be sure to follow along anywhere that you find your favorite podcast. It's called Tate's Take the Podcast. It is the most educational, the most informational, and the most entertaining multi-level basketball podcast on the planet in the form of a podcast. Find it anywhere you find your favorite podcast. That's iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Red Circle. We stream live on YouTube as well. Just click on that little search box, man, where you see that little magnifying glass on there. Hover over that thing, type in Tate's Take, and from there you can be able to follow along. We talk basketball, man. 94 feet long, 50 feet wide, 22 feet and 1 1/4 inches on the perimeter for college, and 23 feet and 1 3/4 inches out on the perimeter for the NBA. So if the goal is 10 feet tall and we talking some hoops, you know exactly the place to go to find it. We have some really good guests on. You never know who you're going to get. We're getting ready to start our draft process, in which I'm bringing on a bunch of different people who cover, beat writers and so forth. And that's going to be a consistent thing. So, I'm excited about it. Make sure that you follow along as well on social media, all social media platforms at Tate's Take Hoops, TATES TAKEHOOPS #. That's where basketball lives. So appreciate you, Mr. Vince, for having me, man. And I'm happy to be able to do this with you again. I was looking on social media the other day, dude, and I saw that something scroll across my timeline where it's been, I think, exactly 9 years since I had my very first debut opportunity to ever crack the mic on the air, WGUN 1010 AM. And that never would have happened if it wasn't for you and a mutual friend of ours named Earl, man. So I'm overly gracious and thankful for the opportunity that you've been able to place in front of me. You believing in me, believing what I'm putting forth. Obviously, as I tell people, listen, go and repost this. You want to follow this dude, Mr. Football, man. The dude has an eye for talent. The dude knows what he's talking about. He knows his football. He knows his baseball. He knows all this stuff, basketball, you name it. And he's a really, really good brother, man, as well. So y'all make sure that y'all go and subscribe where you need to subscribe. Make sure that you go and listen, share with your friends, share with your family, share with your enemies, tell your mama, tell your grandmama, whoever you need to, man. Make sure that you go and follow Mr. Football, because this dude's going places, and I'm a product under his brand and under his umbrella, man. And I'll always and forever be thankful for it, even though I may not say it enough.
Man, I couldn't thank you for the kind words. It's been a journey, man. And man, where we came from, people don't even know the walk that we've had to go through. And I'm gonna say this.
You're gonna make me cry, man. You're gonna make me cry, Mr. Vincent. Don't make me cry,
man. But hey, also further due, like I always say, man, 100 yards of football. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for one man from Brooklyn, New York. That we wouldn't be doing our thing, man, if it wasn't for the young man, Mr. Ronnie Keeble. I love him like a brother. He believed in me when did nobody else, and put his money up. And he know the love I got for him. And he watching you today. But you said some kind words. And finally, if you like the video today, please comment and share it. And I've always say this. I leave 100 yards football saying, hey, I'm Vincent Turner, a.k.a. the baby son and the only son of Chester and Inez Turner in Memphis, Tennessee, the 901. If you like the video, please come in and share it, and follow this young man on Tate's Take, and enjoy sports for the rest of the year. And God bless. And most of all, before I move on, 100 yards of football is not all about Vincent Turner and Ronnie Keeble. Let me tell you about the people that's made me grow before I leave. Jeremiah Long, great producer, the best in the business. A young man that's did a lot of work behind the scenes, Mr. Logan Landers. I can be blessed for him. And then, of course, my great team. I'm going to start with the two-time All-American, 12-year vet out of Florida State University, Mr. Bobby Butler. I consider him the greatest coach in high school football right now, the defensive coordinator at North Carolina, Mr. Kevin the Bull Jones. And my man, I think is the finest college basketball coach on any level. A lot of people haven't heard of him because he coaches at a small college in Atlanta metro area, but I got a lot of love from Brian Spencer. And of course, this young man, DeShaun Tate, coming on today. Hey, man, it's a journey that I can't even describe. But I would say this: if you believe in yourself and don't listen to the naysayers out there and keep working and do your job, like my man from Brooklyn, New York, Ronnie Keeblus, always say, dreams come true. So enjoy the day on 100 yards of football. God bless, and I'll see you this evening.